How you doing? I want to talk to you today about this idea of the right mindset for leadership and ultimately leadership development. And so I was thinking about these 7 areas that are critical to the right mindset around your own fundamental leadership and the leadership and growth of others. And so under the big term of leadership development, I want to walk through this idea of what's the right mindset, or how do you not only develop the right mindset, but how do you then nurture it? And so here's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about this idea of this pressure that you start with, that you feel like something has to change, like something isn't going well for you. And then what do you do with that feeling will be the next piece. This idea of taking a current assessment of your reality as to why you feel that way. And then the next journey would be recognizing a plan, maybe a loose plan, but a plan of what you're going to do to change or improve your current reality. And then from there, you're starting to intentionally work on leadership development for yourself. And then from there, this natural outpouring, if you're going to build something significant, you would look to the investment and growth of others and beyond yourself. And then finally, once you've kind of got to that piece of it, the final piece would be this idea that as you are continuing to grow and you're investing in others, you have reached this phase of multiplication where your rights are laid down and the needs of others are paramount to your own. I think this is the ecosystem of life cycle of mindset. So I want to dive into the first piece of that, having the right mindset in leadership development. I think for almost all of us, including my career, I think about the pressures I had where I was in the stage of leadership. And where I was at the stage of leadership, I remember in one of our businesses that I felt like every decision was mine. And I couldn't walk away from pulling all the levers in the company, and things were working. And I had a really good, high-paying job, but every responsibility was mine. And so I was good at tactical decisions, getting people to make in-the-moment decisions, but I wasn't really expanding or improving in leadership. And so I had this pressure, and it started with this idea of this weight of the world was on my shoulders. And so this first piece, understanding what pressure is coming on you, why something's happening that is forcing you to want to change your current reality, I think is super important to understand what's happening. And so I'd start there. In order to think in medical diagnosis or feelings or emotions, you have to know the source of it. And so for me in that example, what happened was I stepped away from one of our organizations. The board decided that I should no longer be the CEO, and I was on that board and I helped make that decision. Well, I stepped away from the organization because of all the demands and pressures. And I incorrectly assessed that I was pulling more levers than I realized. And that business was in a lot of trouble when I stepped away. But what was happening there was this pressure that I had to make all the decisions for the company. And so an incorrect decision was made off of a bad assessment. So I would encourage you to start there. So let's assume, for the sake of the rest of this video, that you're seeing somewhat clearly your emotional responses to the burden of leadership and you're outgrowing your current version of leadership. Then I would take a real assessment of your reality in there and what could be a plan of what to address. And my first bit of advice on that I took, that I see a lot of people I mentor, is first start with yourself. So my first phase from understanding you have these emotional triggers, the current assessment of your reality, first and foremost, work on your own leadership development. There's a piece of scripture that says a house that's built on rock, a firm foundation, can withstand the storms that would come upon it. And so when you think about the storms in business and the pressures of leadership, to have a good firm foundation would start with good principles of leadership. I love the way John Maxwell thinks of the law of the lid. You're only going to go as far as your leadership at the highest level is going to take you. So if you're not investing daily in your ongoing continued leadership, not only of yourself, but of others, you're going to run up against the law of that lid very quickly. I'm really thankful for that. That was the first phase in mindset that was a big deal for me, that really allowed me to think bigger about business, not only for my responsibilities of leadership, for my role on the team, but how I would think about leading others so that we could have this exponential multiplier multiplying effect within our company. So as I started to get in this cadence, I had to actually develop a habit. And so what were some of those habits in the mindset? I needed to spend time intentionally reading good leadership materials. For me, also, this was a faith journey. I realized and thankful that I have a faith in Christ. And so what also was important was sitting under his teaching for me and having to be obedient to hearing the instruction as my teacher as to what he would say for some of my leadership responsibilities. And so I started to devote intentional time, earmark it in my calendar, and added that. Now, one of the things I did early wrong there was I added it to my calendar, but I didn't remove other things. So I added more pressure, ironically, to my life. And there's a leadership principle that you have to remove things out of there. You hear said, another yes will actually remove your ability to be open to the right yes. So a no rightly timed gives you room for a right yes. And so I had to learn to break things out and reduce more moving parts to make room for good habits in leadership development for myself first. And as I started to develop that discipline, for me it was morning time before everyone else would start to attack my time. Now that was a little different when I had young children. I had to be real strategic as to when I used that time. Maybe I had to leave the house or just not be available to the normal cadence of life. So you're gonna have to make some of those decisions for yourself. And then from there, I really started to make some decisions that once I've guarded that time, quickly I realized that to build something special, I had to have the mindset of not only leading and developing good habits for leadership growth in my own life, but it started to give me capacity and realized, again, John Maxwell saying, people can build good things or a good working job for their career. But if you want to build something truly special and help a lot more people, you can't do it alone. And so I started to realize that the next piece of this for me in my mindset was deciding to not only invest in the habits of my own growth, but this idea that I've decided that I was going to invest in, identifying others who are capable of today's leaders for tomorrow's opportunities. The first journey in multiplication is identifying these people and then inviting them into the story. And then importantly, as part of the next piece of this mindset principle, is deciding mentally that I'm going to invest my time, my talents, and my treasures to equip the multiplication of others within our organization. And so in that phase, there's a lot of risk being taken, but I decided, and I still decide, regardless of how painful and hard that is, I have predetermined, yes, that I'm going to help invest, maybe even disproportionately, time in others' growth above other elements of tactical operation decisions within our company. And so I remember early in my career, I used to always say things like, I would delegate those tasks. But I want to challenge you, do you delegate authority? I think it's a bigger principle of leadership that most people don't think about. I think when we think about delegate, we think about delegating tasks to do and not delegating the idea of critical thinking or the authority to make decisions, which I think is a much bigger deal in the expansion of an organization. You're only going to go as far as your leadership can take you. And that's why John Maxwell's principle, the law of the lid, is so always true as it plays out in the growth cycle of a business. So here you are, you've got this mindset, you really are convinced that investing in yourself and others is a functional component to leadership. Well, where do you go? Well, let's assume you have these habits in place that I've been discussing and you're putting the time in. You're going to run against trials of many kinds. And what I've noticed throughout this phase of business is a lot of preconceived notions about how things are going to get done. And so we usually lean on the way we got there is the way we're going to get out of or into our next piece of it. And that is where a lot of people stop in this journey. Either one, they invite someone into the journey, and that person may have been the right person, but the wrong timing, or they invite someone into the journey and it was the wrong person. In either scenario, it doesn't make the journey of multiplication wrong. It meant that you faced a trial, and can you go and seek or persevere through that trial in such a way that you have the requisite knowledge and wisdom to endure it? And if not, are you going to go seek the counsel and advice, the wisdom necessary to endure that trial in your leadership disruption in your organization? And so right here, right at this moment, I see many people who would take back the reins of authority because of a setback in their leadership team. And this is where good coaching, good mentoring is critical. Can you go seek wisdom from others who have had the privilege in their career to lead well in multiplication, in building up others, and have faced the trials of life and business in doing that? It's a big deal, and that's why that's a mindset piece. You've already pre-decided that you're going to build up other leaders, not because you have a current leader that's doing a good job. Because if you decided it's just because the leader you have and they leave, that's like a house that's not on a firm foundation. They leave and the whole idea crumbles. So what's the principle that's bigger than the person that's in front of you is this idea of leadership multiplication. Investing, first off identifying and then investing in today's leaders for tomorrow's opportunities. And so because that's true and you have that mindset, this takes time. This takes time in all those principles, investing in your own leadership, because while there are certain attributes within leadership and communication and the way you talk to people that some people have certain talents and others have certain talents, leadership is not one of those things that one person has and another doesn't. It takes time to put these things into practice. And so, Jesus is a teacher that I follow, and he would always talk to his leaders and say, put these things into practice. He's saying, encouraging me to spend the time knowing it's going to be longer than just today, producing results of good leadership. And so it's going to take you time, not only to invest in your own growth, but it's going to improve daily as you lead others. And so that's why it all comes back to this mindset shift, not motivation. You notice how I haven't said motivation. Motivation is a good tool to start. It's not an enduring tool to continue. Persevering and endurance requires something far greater than motivation. It requires a predetermined decision. That is like where you're heading. That is a pre-decision that you want leadership and multiplication regardless of your current motivation. So I just want to leave you with this. When you think about this idea of leadership development and all the components that go into that, you really got to start with what is it you want out of it. If you're just looking to delegate tasks and have people do things for you, that's not leadership, that's management. And it's management and operations are critical to an organization. But one of the things I've noticed in John's law of the lid is that your business will only go as far as the decentralized or delegated ability for authority decisions to be made at the higher level by not just one person, but to be shared among your leadership team. If you don't have that, I would say first look in the mirror and start with a decision that you want that, and start investing in some habits and growth in your own leadership development, and then take some risk inviting others into that journey. And I promise you that if you do that, and follow these kind of steps in the practicing of that journey, you will get to the other side of this journey of leadership development, another season of it, and you will see the power of multiplication. So if you like this or stuff like this, hey, subscribe to our page, share it with people, because our journey is to really get that out, help people. And we have resources. We have an infographic here and tools and resources to help you with this journey of how to embrace mindset so that you can embrace leadership multiplication.